This video is for business leaders who want to stay even further ahead by proactively innovating with the help of outside, naive consultants or help. So watch to the end of this video for bonus material on how to use outsiders for your proactive innovation, and a recommended video on the only outside consultant with over 3 billion years of experience. So this is actually part 4 of 5 of a series on proactive innovation. I apologize, it's a little confusing because it had 2 introductory episodes, which was the argument for proactive innovation, and then 3 parts, this being part 2 of that, or video 4 altogether, for specific applications of how you would actually enact the proactive innovation, which was argued for in the first 2 introductory overview videos. So essentially what this comes down to is expanding your innovation and strengthening your intellectual property by continuously innovating. And one of the strongest ways you can do that is to get the help of outsiders. Now, I highly recommend you have any outside hire sign both an NDA or non-disclosure agreement and a work for hire or whatever kind of document else to protect your intellectual property. Before making any intellectual property decisions, consult with an intellectual property lawyer. I am not a lawyer. Rather, I'm a reasonably knowledgeable layperson with respect to some of the IP laws, but absolutely, before you do anything with respect to agreements of hiring outside consultants or doing this, talk to an actual expert, specifically a lawyer for IP and engaging in this practice that I'm going to describe. It's very valuable, but you absolutely should have that expert legal opinion, expert legal advice to make sure they're signing the right documents and proceeding in the correct way to protect your IP. So these are my own ideas and strategies on how to leverage continuous innovation efforts, and in particular the power of having an outside perspective. Now, in a former video, I did talk about Matthew E. May and his book Winning the Brain Game and the 7 Fatal Flaws of Thinking. One of them is being not invented here, and this is very strong protection against that bias. Now, he argues, I can't remember the exact fix, but one of the fixes, oh, well, just think of yourself from an outside perspective or something like that. To be honest with you, that's pretty weak. It's an excellent book, and I highly recommend it. But there is no way to have an outside perspective on your company and its internal workings, just as there's no real way to have a truly objective opinion about yourself. Yes, you can use second or third person pronouns, but no, you cannot have an outside perspective. You need an outside person, ideally a qualified but naive person about the specifics of your company is the best way to do this. So that person, to get that genuine perspective, must be from the outside of your company. Done right, the investment you make will pay multiple times in savings and income, and preventing loss from competitive market innovations. That is, by doing this, not only can you do your proactive innovation I've talked about in the former videos, but in this particular case, you're getting somebody coming in and saying, oh, well, what about this? And everybody goes, oh, I can't believe I didn't think of that. And I assure you, this happens at even for the Fortune 500 or the Fortune 50 or the Fortune 10, whatever it is. These companies cannot see everything. They are not superpowered. They have money and resources and good people, but it's not that hard to miss one thing out of an infinite number of choices when it comes to innovation. So while I focus on products in particular in this description that I'm about to go through, the same could be applied to training, business development, business models, or anything else where value can be created through innovation. What follows are some of the strategies for companies of any size to use, with some specific notes to larger companies and smaller companies depending what kind of a leader you are and what kind of a company you work for or own. So for solopreneurs and small business people, this is one of the few ways you can actually compete on a mostly level playing field, even with the megacorps. In his book, The Innovation Stack, Jim McKelvey is the co-founder of Square, and he talks about how he squared off with Amazon with his Square payment system and won. So it's possible that might be an exception, but Amazon could have crushed him, but they didn't. And ironically, I'll leave it for you to go read the book to find out what action he took, which surprised me what action he took. But the bottom line is it worked. Amazon went, well, it's just not worth it for us to try to compete with this guy. He's doing well enough that it would probably be more costly to try to crush him than it would to just let him have this, because ironically enough, I believe he was actually selling the scanners for his iPhone or Android phone scanners for payments via Amazon. So even so, Amazon was still winning because they're still gaining income even if they couldn't compete. So it's a very interesting case. So essentially what this means is anyone has the potential to create game-changing innovations regardless of their resources. That's really as simple and as complex as it gets. So if you are part of a megacorp, you also have the advantage over and above this, because it applies to you too, is that you have the additional resources, the intellectual property, the lawyers, the engineers, whatever it is you need. So my argument here is that hiring the right outsourcers to innovate or work around your IP is an investment well worth making. Protecting a single piece of IP against a disruptive competitor is likely to save you a fortune in litigation alone, if it ever goes there. In most cases, even for big companies, it's not really worth getting into litigation. I know of a specific case where there's these big printing machines, these machines that print printing plates for big printing presses for a company I used to work for. And one of the engineers was telling me about the machines we had, which printed them, and the company was called GSI Krios, who made these machines. Krios. Getting two almost identically named companies confused here. And another company who overtly, copied completely the exact same mechanism inside the printer. And in the words of this engineer who was repairing one of these machines, he goes, in cases like this, the only thing that really happens is the company who's willing to spend the most money will win the battle, regardless of whether they overtly engaged in intellectual property theft. So you don't really want to go there, and one of the best ways to not go there is to have outside innovators help you by helping you develop your IP in a direction you from the inside can't do. So you and your colleagues can never really have a truly outside perspective of your company's innovations or IP, which is kind of a repetitive thing for me to say. But you're inside the culture, you have pre-existing knowledge and biases that you have that they simply don't. You can't unknow anything. Naive or ignorant outsiders lack those biases and see what you can't. So make sure you get outside consultants to sign your work for hire. I've already talked about this a little bit. Development agreements and anything else your IP counsel recommends, so that you own the IP you've paid them to develop. Not my area of expertise. I just know the NDA, the work for hire, the development, and and perhaps other agreements would be relevant. So thank you for watching this far. We've made it to the bonus material. That's really all it was about. Bottom line, outsiders have an outside perspective that you cannot have. So to continuously innovate and recruit outsiders, what you want to do is have them generate specific IP to protect your present and future innovations of your products. I personally haven't bought a single overpriced replacement toothbrush or replacement toothbrush head for my sonic toothbrush in decades, because I found a simple way to use the brush from a normal toothbrush for my own personal use instead. So I just did my own hack of a famous product that you can probably guess who it is, but by not naming them, there's really nothing they can do. And if you use something for your own personal use, there's nothing in terms of intellectual property a company can do. So that wasn't that hard to do, and means anybody can do it, which is why you need somebody from the outside to look at these things. I did it, many people, and in fact, though I never commercialized that design, I've seen plenty of generic copycats for replacement heads for that particular sonic toothbrush, with replacement brushes that cost a fraction of what the name brand ones do, and they're being sold widely on Amazon. So they are definitely losing money there, and perhaps they could have prevented that with an outsider. Maybe not, but they are losing money to outside people overtly stealing their idea. Mine didn't, mine doesn't, and I could have commercialized it, but never happened. So anyway, outsiders will basically further strengthen, broaden your IP in directions based on their experience, which is different than yours. They come from a different background, and their actual lack of foreknowledge, both which differ from every insider. So basically, their lack of foreknowledge and their fundamentally different experience than anybody in your company will take your intellectual property and your product development in a direction you simply can't. You know too much about the inside. So this is a case in which ignorance is innovation. Your inside team is unlikely and perhaps even capable of seeing that particular direction for innovation. So what you want to do is you want to challenge them as, had I been hired by the Sonic Toothbrush Company and they says, well, can you get around our IP? Sure, I would show them how. They will then, I or they, because it could be me, will approach it differently than your in-house development team and come up with different intellectual properties. What this will help you do then is by identifying those things that you may not be able to see yourself, it can help you build a wall of patents around your existing IP, or you can even actually license that new IP to others, even your competition in some cases where it might actually make sense, so that you can be profiting from your competition. They may have a differentiation, but if you've got the right IP, now you could contact them and say, well, look, we noticed that differentiation. Well, we have an intellectual property on that now. If you want to work as partners, you can license and continue the right without going to litigation to make your product. In most cases, it would be cheaper for them to do that. So there's that too. So it may seem counterintuitive, but licensing to another party could make you and them money, and under the right conditions be a win for everybody, better than litigation or any other alternatives that might otherwise come up. It will also discourage new competitors because you have that intellectual property in place. So you could get your competition who is now infringing on these new patents to pay you a license fee and discourage anybody else from even trying to get into the space. Since you're the IP holder, though, and this is the beauty of it, you actually control the use of the IP within the terms you've negotiated between yourself and the licensee who's already licensed your patents. So you also have that over them, or that as well. And if they decide to stop paying you, or you want to raise your license fees, you're in a good position because you actually have the intellectual property ownership, which could stop them from manufacturing or selling in whatever country you have those patents. So that's it. Tomorrow will actually be the fifth and final video of this series about proactive innovation. It will be about strategies for making income from your proactive IP, even if you aren't selling any products based on that new or proactively developed IP yet. If this or any of the other videos that you've watched of mine have brought you value, please share the love by sharing my videos. Thanks. So the recommended video for today is Biomimicry book review, because nature is the only outside consultant with approximately 3.5 to 3.8 billion years of experience at developing products. Definitely worth a look and a direction that you won't have to pay nature, but you will have to pay people to research if you want to make a specific product. But nature is the ultimate designer. She's worth learning from. So that's it for Crush It Club 224, New Innovations, How to Disrupt from the Outside In. My name is Tim B. Green. Bye for now.